Hi guys, welcome to a review video for Star Wars The Old Republic patch 5.0 performance updates and changes. BioWare didn't mention too much in the patch notes, or at least throughout the huge gigantic list, I wasn't really able to find much on the topic. The only two bullet points that I managed to discover were the added new engine technology to improve fidelity of facial expressions in conversations and cinematics for all characters across the entire game. This graphical improvement is visible on high shader settings. Character animations is smoother and more performance allowing for more visible characters. Combat and large population scene runs significantly faster. The visibility systems has been optimized, increasing the frame rate and making the use of cascade shadows less expensive. Alright, if there are any more changes than these, then you should probably point them out to me. However, I did some significant research and digging. I went back 14 months ago when I recorded a video, which I believe I have right here, and of course I will have it linked for you. It was my first ever SWTOR performance test that I've created for myself, and I keep the score, the results, in a spreadsheet, which I might actually share later on with my patrons, for example, as a bonus, but it's not really something that very important. All you need to know is the numbers that I will be telling you. And to talk about the numbers, we're switching to this screen because I'm right now on the fleet. Unfortunately, the negative side effect of Life Day is currently happening, and we've got snowflakes flying all over the place. I want to show you the exact same places, even though I did research them previously with different characters in different time frames on different servers. But I've decided, instead of just talking on top of a static screen or a spreadsheet or something, I will just fly through the planets and explain to you what my observations were and how exactly I've noticed the changes, because yes, there are quite a lot of positive changes in regards to FPS, which you can monitor here somewhere in the bottom left corner. Maybe for that I will have to switch my webcam, which I probably should have done a little bit earlier before. There we go. That's better. Now in the bottom left corner, for those of you who are watching at the highest quality because the number is far too small, you will be able to monitor the live performance of my game. My hardware specifications have not changed significantly, at least not the parts that are directly related to the game. Full hardware specifications you can find on the link shared down below in the video description. Very quickly, while I'm actually traveling to my ship, I will tell you that I'm running on a video card GTX Palit 980 Ti, not overclocked, it's factory overclocked. My CPU is still the very same old, but still very high-end and very high-quality CPU. Core i7 4770K, it's overclocked to 4.6, excuse me, on all 4 cores, because it couldn't handle 4.7 on all 4 of them. I've got 16 gigabytes of RAM, and the game is running on an SSD. One more time, if you really want to check my full hardware capabilities or full hardware specifications of my PC, check below for the link in the video description, and you will find the price tags attached to them, of course, from Amazon. But of course, you can compare that to your local provider, whatever and wherever it is. Now, first, obviously, the most interesting change is the new cap lock. I can't really say if it's different for different systems because I've only had a chance to test the game on my own system, but the cap of frames per second has been raised to about 205. This is the highest I ever managed to achieve, regardless of high video settings or low video settings. These things did not impact the game much. I strongly advise you, unless you have a really old system spec, don't change the settings, don't make the game ugly. On medium range and especially on higher range hardware these days, this game is going to run as smooth as it can. there will be hiccups because the engine is still crap. It's still the old buggy and broken engine that the game is running on. And every time you see more people on the screen, we'll talk about that later on when I share my observations and analysis on the Warzone performances. Every time you see more people on the screen, the FPS will drop. There is no way to avoid that. How much it's going to drop, it depends on luck, on your PC, and on BioWare's decision to change the engine, which obviously will never happen. Right here in my home, without anything else happening and with the annoying snowflakes all over me, I have about 160 average, I would say, FPS. It can go higher and can go lower. I haven't really decorated my stronghold too much, but from the stronghold, I'm actually going to jump right into my starship where hopefully we will be able to witness the maximum FPS that the game is allowing me to run. This is full screen borderless, so it's not the real full screen. It's full screen borderless. And how can you tell if you're running full screen borderless? If you do this. On my ship, we can see that currently the FPS is just about hovering 200 and a little above that. If I sit still without doing anything, it's probably going to reach those magic numbers 205, 206. For me personally, the previous lock was on 103. Many people have said that since the release of the game, the FPS lock, hard lock, has been on 111. I never managed to reach that. My cap was on 103, and I'm not really sure if that depends on the resolution. Most important thing, as you probably already know if you're following my channel for long enough, I do play with 1440p resolution, and that's my native resolution on my screen. This is actually a downside for the game because from what I've been reading and researching through the years, the game was never really optimized for higher resolutions. Yes, many players already run the game on 4K, but it doesn't mean that the game does originally support it. Yes, you can run it and it is displayable in the game section, in the in-game settings, but there are many issues. There are still those issues with running the game with more than one video card pair, depending whether it's NVIDIA or AMD, you know, they have different names. It does matter if you have displaying the names above your character, above friendly characters, enemy characters. It does matter if you're scaling them up and down. These things affect your performance, unfortunately. I personally prefer to run PvE without names displayed, and of course in PvP everybody needs names displayed. I could never learn and understand why exactly would people want to have their own name displayed on the screen all the time. Maybe so they don't forget what character they're playing. Anyway, from the ship I'm about to jump to Rishi without wasting too much time. Now let's see, Rishi was supposed to be here. Rishi, to my knowledge, is one of the most buggiest, heaviest and laggiest planets ever to be created and introduced to Star Wars: The Old Republic. On my previous test 14 months ago, I managed to draw a minimum FPS. I'm looking at the other screen because that's where my stats are. My previous lowest score was 26 FPS during the recording and the test, and my maximum was 65, 66 or something. The average though was above 45, and that's good. Now we are on Rishi. The FPS shows above 110, fluctuating between 110 and 140. Because of my thorough testing in the past few days, I can tell you that depending on, of course, how very populated this place is, unfortunately, it's not exactly very populated right now, but it does jump up and down. This is probably one of the most detailed places in the whole game, and the beginning area of Rishi, right here, the what was that? The Cove section? God, I forget what's the name. Raiders Cove. This is one of the most detailed, vertically speaking, sections in the game, with a lot of things moving, a lot of vendors around. especially when you've got NPCs talking and moving all the time around you. That costs FPS. And right now, sitting still, I see that the number is kind of frozen on the lower range of 70s. If I keep moving and turning around, it is going to drop back, but there is an improvement. Yep, it's not big. Comparing what my previous test shows, this is kind of like between 30 and 45% improvement. I was never really able to say or to confirm exact percentage improvements. I tried that originally and then I gave up because FPS in the game fluctuates so very much, and with such a big intervals, well, I could do it if I record it properly, but it's pointless really, because what you count here as average doesn't really work for you, as when you watch another performance review for another game where average actually means something. Because unfortunately here, one moment you can have 100 FPS, in the next moment you move one step to a side and you see the FPS dropping down to 40. Yep, 40 is still a good number, but jumping from 100 all the way down to 40 is not good, and unfortunately the game still does it. My machine is kind of on the high end still, even though the CPU is relatively old now. For gaming, it's still very good, and it's still way better than what it is supposed to be required by the game. Moving around the Raider's Cove, we can see that the FPS remains above the 60 mark. I don't have VSync on, and just for the sake of being thorough, I'm going to show you the graphics sections settings that I'm using. Pretty much everything is on high, with of course the exception of shadow map resolution. Even though my card is supposed to be able to handle higher numbers than 1024, I tried it. Wow, it's an overkill. It's a total disaster with nearly no visible improvement in terms of visual fidelity. So I don't recommend anybody doing any higher than what the game suggests. I believe the game usually suggests the lowest number. Just double checking quickly, because sometimes it's a bug in the game, other times I think there is something wrong. No, definitely shadow quality is on high, and yet I am seeing my shadow as a silly dot. It's probably because of the pet. There we go. When you don't have a pet mounted, your shadow actually displays properly. The FPS is definitely stable compared to the previous results from 14 months ago, which was actually right when patch 3.3.1 or damn, I forgot now. I think it was 3.3.1 or 3.3.2, one of those. It doesn't really matter that much. The video is from September 2015. You have it linked in the description and as a YouTube overlay card. You can definitely check it on yourself. The FPS improvements are clearly visible. What I'm showing you here is not exactly really a good material because the place is empty, but believe me, I did more tests in different time zones on different servers with different characters. I had a chance to see a more populated Rishi. I never had a chance to see a full instance on Rishi, because the maximum I managed to catch was on the Harbinger server 2 days ago, very early my morning, so that's what, very late US time. And the population on Rishi was 40 something people, I believe. Anyway, this part is done. The next one is, let's jump to the fleet. My previous numbers, my previous recordings from the previous test show that I managed to get about 45 to 50 average on the fleet. But depending on the number of people in which section of the fleet I was located in, FPS counter was jumping a lot higher or a lot lower. I did record my minimum FPS on the fleet 1 year ago to be 27. So again, 27 is nothing. If I stayed long, or if I was more lucky or more unlucky, this lower number could be even worse. That's why it's really hard to do performance review on Star Wars The Old Republic. Probably that's why nobody ever used or uses or will use the game for any kind of benchmark testing, because the engine is total crap. But it still looks good, even though it's very old. We already saw, I don't know why I rushed to escape from the populated section of the spawn point here on the fleet, but this is the Red Eclipse instance 2. If I'm able to move on to instance 1, it should be probably even more full than this, just for the sake of displaying. Again, I run it in different time zones in different days, and I'm able to tell you more accurate results than what I'm probably going to display before you here on the screen. My average FPS from my current testing on the fleet was something in the range between 65 and 70. And again, I'm rounding those numbers because it was never really easy for me to manage to set something average due to the constant fluctuation. Right now we're in the fullest instance on the Red Eclipse server fleet, Republic fleet, and we've got about 179 people. The FPS in the bottom left corner shows about 60 average. On the same spot 14 months ago, it was just about 40 to 50% lower, with even bigger fluctuations. The next place on the fleet we really have to visit is the combat training, and then after that we are going to stop by the GTN. Now first let's move quickly to the combat training section and see what the number of people sitting still means for the game, and will that actually affect something. When you display guild window, crafting window and other things, there are still those usual delays. Look at that, the crew skills takes like about a couple seconds to display, with a very clearly visible lag and stuttering on the screen if you're moving the camera. Something similar happens to the guild window, but it's nowhere near as tragically unacceptable from about a year ago. That was actually a bug that BioWare finally managed to fix. I don't know why it's doing the same with the crew skills. Probably it's gonna be fixed soon, hopefully. We are in the combat section area of the fleet. If you really want to learn what exactly has been changed, because if you haven't been into the game recently, patch 5.0 brought quite a bit of design and overlay changes to the fleet. But browsing through different kinds of vendors, opening menus, and working with the terminals, lying around, it's really more fluid, more easygoing, and with less lag. There is still the FPS counter jumping up and down. Look, right now, right here, it's around 100. Down there where people were moving and just being present, the FPS counter dropped immediately to about 60-ish FPS. The last place on the fleet we're going to visit is the trade market, which is usually the most populated place, but unfortunately, due to everybody sitting still in front of the market, that was a nice stuttering moment, and it keeps stuttering actually right here. It's really, really heavy. Unfortunately, as I've told you in the beginning of the video, and the snowflakes definitely help with that, there is no way the engine is broken, and there is no way to overcome or work around the FPS drops. You did notice, I hope, in the bottom left corner, if you didn't scroll some 30 seconds back into the video and see at the moment when I was arriving here to that place, how incredibly laggy it was. And yes, we have an extra number of people here because of the Life Day celebration. I'm not going to bother displaying too much of the Life Day celebration, how much this crazy thing costs, and all the flashiness here and the decorations. But just so you know, when you have more people on the screen, your FPS is going to drop. This was the part about the fleet. I do want to talk a little bit about Uprisings because, well, that's something new, and you might be wondering, Uprisings are extremely well balanced. The only low FPS that I've ever experienced was when I was doing Dawn and Dusted. It's a kind of a big open space part of Tatooine where the Uprising is taking place. And for me, it was not exactly a big issue, but compared to the others, it was on about 40-ish%, maybe 45% lower average FPS. And I run it with the same class, my Sentinel. I run it with the same companion and with the same partner, Zentrax, my tank. We duo those. And I can't really say if it's because it's a bigger place open, but compared to the other Uprisings, this one was really noticeably laggier. And by laggier, I mean it was dropping down often and staying there to the range of 30-ish FPS, 30, 35, and the upper 30 is closing to 40. That's still very playable. I'm sure that most of you are very happy with this number, depending on your system and how you've been running the game so far. Maybe you seeing the hundreds here and 200s on my ship, you would believe I'm cheating, or maybe I'm playing on an incredibly expensive PC. No, Huawei really did some nice improvements, and unlocking the FPS cap was a really good decision as well. In terms of flashpoints, just like the Uprisings, the FPS counter is sitting much more stable. The biggest reason for flashpoints and Uprising is because you have a smaller number of mobs and players on the screen, and you know that the players are the biggest issue when it comes to overcrowding the screen with different kinds of player-caused effects, side effects, ability animations, just character movements, character decorations, and outfits if you wish, because some of the more modern outfits actually feature incredibly cool looking animations, fluids all over the chest bodies and wings, even on your back for whatever reason. The last piece of analysis is about the war zones. Unfortunately, some of them are still laggy just as they were before, and I'm here thinking and speaking and probably showing before you on the screen the some of the bits and pieces that I recorded from doing the SWTOR. I don't know what's wrong with the SWTOR. Is it the big space or something else? I see. But the SWTOR FPS counter was exactly the same as 14 months ago when I did the previous test. On the others, for example, one of the other very laggy war zones was the pylons. In the pylons, regardless of whether we were stacking up in the middle or spreading all over the place to the left pylon or to the right pylon, things were much smoother, and my lowest FPS that I managed to record was 33, I believe. Let me check, 34. Which is really good for a Warzone. The average was more on the upper 40s or even 50 FPS. And that's with a lot of people all over the place and a lot of people bunching up together in the middle in all kinds of situations. I didn't test Hutbo. Hutbo is yet again another of the most laggiest places because of all the fire animations, the big open space, and so on and so on. It just didn't pop, and I didn't want to spend 2 days farming those war zones just so I can have a test. So yep, I ran through 6 war zones, and SWTOR repeated 3 times, unfortunately. I did a few arenas as well, but the arenas don't count because I've personally always had nearly flawless FPS and no issues whatsoever in arenas. My counter has personally never dropped below 50-ish. And that's again with the game running on everything on maximum, with full shadows, full effects, high distance for visible characters, and so on and so on. You get my point. My previous score from September 2015 was lowest 25, or at least that's what my cheat list says over here, and an average of 35 to 40 with the high numbers reaching 50s on some of the war zones. That was acceptable to me. It was never a pleasure because I know how expensive my PC was, and it still is, but reaching those numbers was actually acceptable for me, and I've learned to play around them. Today, I have to say that I've noticed an improvement of nearly 50% in terms of my FPS in war zones overall. It's a rounded number. If it's not 50, it's maybe, let's say, 45 to 55, but it is a huge improvement indeed. It may not allow you to play the game smoothly if you weren't able before, but definitely check it out. Loading times have not improved. That's a completely different topic. I just had it spawn in my mind and I wanted to say it before I wrap up the video. Loading times in the game personally for me have not changed. Maybe it's because it loads fairly quick or quick enough, because for about 4 years now, or 3 at least, I've been running the game on an SSD. If you can afford SSD, do that. With this game or with any other game, even with Windows, SSD is the best upgrade in terms of loading speed on anything. Whether it's a game, an application, or the operating system itself, it's a huge advantage. And I'm getting really tired staring at the snowball fight here on the screen, even though you've been watching bits and pieces of my other pre-recorded previous tests. I'm wrapping up the video, guys. Hopefully this was interesting and helpful to you. If I have more time, maybe I'll do a more detailed breakdown in the form of an article with some spreadsheets and with some graphs and more interesting information to be able to present to you during the holiday. But right now, due to my time limits, I don't think I can afford it. If you like that video, well, share your positive thoughts down below in the video. Regardless of whether you like the video or not, let me know, how is your performance in Star Wars The Old Republic? Or, if you are a new player, does that video make you change your opinion on trying the game? Does that make you want to try the game right now? Or, considering how unbalanced the engine and the game still are, maybe you would be put off from trying it? What do you think? It's your turn now. Bye bye. Thank you for watching. I hope you have enjoyed the video. Click the like button and help me out. Visit my website vulkk.com for daily videos and news. To help me improve and expand, consider becoming my patron with a small monthly pledge. And stay in touch by following me on Facebook and Twitter.